I want you all to imagine that you're a judge, and also that it's your very first day. You're enormously excited. All that sacrifice, years in law school, so many exams, decades even in legal practice. And you put on your robe and you walk out into your courtroom, and then you begin to feel it. The weight. Not just the weight of your robe, not just the weight of responsibility and expectation, but the weight of the sheer volume and complexity of the work. Hundreds of pages stacked up on every single case, dozens and dozens of cases, week after week, and around a month in, the weight, it becomes crushing. Flip the lens. I want you to imagine that you're a court user, that you're a litigant to be. And maybe some of you have gone through this process. You feel wronged. You've been fired from your job unfairly. That amount of money that you lent to an acquaintance and they haven't responded to you. Your deposit that your landlord should have given back isn't being paid back. You've no choice. You have to go to court. So you file a claim. You feel like something's moving. But then days become weeks, weeks become months, months becomes a year, and you're despondent. The thing is, these circumstances for the overburdened judge, the delayed litigant, that's not too unusual around the globe. Courts are under massive strain, and delays are palpable. So what if there was an elixir, a life raft, a silver bullet, holy grail technology that could cure these problems? You know where I'm going with this. Artificial intelligence. At the crunch of an algorithm, AI can recommend how long someone should go to jail for, or AI could recommend how risky it is that someone will perpetrate intimate partner violence. AI could generate text that could form the judgment altogether. Instant justice. Now, for that judge, that might look like relief. For that litigant, that might look like speed, a resolution, moving on with their life. But I have an important question. What do you think? Would you trust that process? Would you think that that's legitimate? And here's the thing. What I described there isn't the future, it's here and now. What many maybe don't realize is artificial intelligence is influencing judicial decision-making across the globe, and it's very common. There are about 40 decision support tools in the European Union supporting judicial decision-making, many of them based on algorithms and advanced AI. 2 examples. In Spain, an algorithmic tool is used to measure the risk that someone will perpetrate intimate partner violence in the future. In Germany, a generative AI system is used to generate parts of judgment text in repetitive, relatively low-stakes cases, specifically aviation passenger claims. Further afield, for more than a decade, an algorithmic tool is used to measure the risk that a convicted criminal is likely to reoffend on a risk score of 1 to 10. And the algorithm is protected by trade secret. It's operated by a private technology company. It asks convicted criminals, do you feel lonely? Was there much crime in your neighborhood? Do you feel bored? In China, the government there has started to introduce and roll out generative AI wholesale and algorithmic tools wholesale so that judicial decision-making is standardized across the board. It's even used to generate the text of judgments altogether in so-called simple cases. And yes, our old friend ChatGPT makes an appearance too. In the US, there were a couple of cases last year where there were hallucinated cases in the judgments themselves. So, here's the thing. Do you feel uncomfortable about this? The other side of this is that overburdened judge, that litigant who's experiencing delay, that is just as real. In England and Wales, a study was conducted in 2024. 1 in 3 circuit judges experienced extreme stress, the primary driver being workload. In terms of the sheer volume of litigation, in Brazil, recent data says that there's 80 million cases in the Brazilian system, 50 million in the Indian system. In 2024, in Ireland, that's a population of 5.5 million, there were over 500,000 new matters initiated in that 1 year alone. There are about 200 judges taking care of that. So we have a dilemma. And we can see this dilemma perhaps on a spectrum. We say, no way, we cannot automate justice in any shape or form. Or the opposite end of the spectrum. Let it rip. This crisis is too grand. Or we find that sweet spot, the middle ground, where we think to ourselves, what is appropriate, principled development? So I research AI in courts. And I work with human-computer interaction specialists, AI experts, psychologists, behavioral scientists. And what we're inclined to agree on is that everything hinges on one key principle. Judicial systems hinge on it, and that is legitimacy. And if we break down legitimacy for a moment, legitimacy is the stuff that means that we buy into the system, that we obey it, that we're not entirely dependent on force and coercion, from the public through to the court user, through to lawyers, through to judges. And we can break down legitimacy into 4 parts. And they reflect 4 main questions. Do you trust the system? Is it neutral? Do you have a voice? And do you have dignity and respect? Trust, neutrality, voice, and respect. And if we think of the judicial system itself, maybe we can think of it as an engine that's beginning to rattle, that's beginning to creak. And it has 4 cylinders in it to deliver legitimate justice. Again, voice, respect, neutrality, and trust. And if those 4 cylinders are up and running and firing, then we get legitimate justice. And we can think of artificial intelligence as a new fuel for that engine that either promises to get that engine up and running really smoothly, or it could seize everything up completely. And so that's what my research is about. I ask questions about that fuel. And if we think about it, we can ask fundamental questions like, well, what will we use this fuel for? What use cases, scenarios, what decision-making tasks? So what we do is we get hundreds of people to participate in experiments, and we ask people to assume the role of a litigant in a mock trial. And across all of the experiments, everyone gets the same trial, everyone even gets the same outcome, but we tell people that AI has been used at some stage in assisting the judge in the outcome that they got. So we're not here to replace judges or think about it that way. We're thinking about ways that AI can be used in that process. So we ask, well, what decision-making task could it be used for? So in one experiment, what we did is we ran people through exactly the same mock trial, exactly the same outcomes for everyone. But in one condition, what we varied was what the tool was actually used for. Was it used to help the judges in determining compensation levels, which is a computational, quantitative, algorithmic task, or whether the AI was used for a more qualitative, fault-based task, determining liability, assisting the judge in making that call on who is right or wrong. And what we found across those measures of legitimacy is that AI was preferred or was perceived as more legitimate when it was engaged in helping the judge with the quantitative task of measuring what compensation should be. In another experiment, we considered the ingredients of the fuel. A key consideration of artificial intelligence is that it's very hard to understand, the so-called black box, and explanations are important. So, in that experiment, again, same mock trial, same outcomes, but for some of the participants, we gave them an explanation, either about how the AI functions or how the AI set the individual outputs and weighed them up to give the judge a steer. And in another condition, we didn't give any explanation at all. And what we found there was that explanations made a big difference in terms of perceptions of legitimacy being higher than the no explanation condition. Another time, we asked, where does the fuel come from? Who builds the artificial intelligence system that helps the judge out? And so, we broke them up into conditions where either a big technology company built it, or the AI system was built by the judiciary within it in collaboration with experts. And here's the thing. Intriguingly, and over a couple of experiments, these need to be replicated, and it is still at the preliminary phases of investigation, it seems that that doesn't matter quite as much, or perhaps even at all. That doesn't make a difference for perceptions of legitimacy. And that, frankly, surprised us. But the thing is here that all of these experiments can feed into a broader investigation that is no longer abstract, but can actually feed into the meaningful and proper design of AI to build for legitimacy, not just efficiency. And how do we do that? It starts out with asking you and myself, well, what would we find acceptable in the first place? What kinds of scenarios, what kinds of areas of law will we be okay with? People might be accepting of this technology to help judges when it's a minor consumer rights claim, but not necessarily if it's going to sentence someone for between 10 and 20 years. Once we get over that, then we need to ask people, well, what values should be built into that system? And then it's that point that it's crucial that we get legal experts in. Judges, experienced litigation practitioners, they are the people who know about the rule of law and how it manifests in courtrooms. They know what open justice looks like. They know what impartiality looks like. They know about the independence of the judiciary. And they're the ones who can translate what the public value and combine it with those crucial rule of law norms that must underpin judicial systems. And here's the next bit. They are the linchpin because they need to be the ones in the room who help the AI developers build the system in collaboration, in co-design, through dialogue. Then we get our prototype AI system and we test it. And we test it for legitimacy, using those 4 markers, those 4 component parts, those 4 cylinders: trust, voice, neutrality, respect. The bottom line is, courts are under strain, and AI will be part of the solution. The genie is very much out of the bottle already. The only question is how. We must all get involved. We must be involved because in just the same way that we demand legitimacy of our political actors, we need to demand the same of our judicial system. Because the future of justice is being shaped right now. Let's make sure it represents the very best of us. Thank you.